Fill your day with joy and happiness here on 90.9 FM Radio Baha'i, streaming at radiobaha'i.us.
Your station for love, peace, and unity. This is 90.9 FM Radio Baha'i, WLGI. We're streaming at radiobaha'i.us. It is yours truly, TJ Jones, and I have a special guest with me. It's been a while since I talked to him, but he's still doing his thing throughout the community, and he's here today to talk to us a little bit about an amazing event that's going to take place this Saturday, August 5th. Mr. Steve Williams. Mr. Williams, how you doing?
I'm doing well, TJ, and I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk about this wonderful celebration we have going on.
Yeah, this is awesome. This is great right here. The title of the event is Bring Harriet Home, Journey to Freedom. And it's an amazing event. But before we talk a little bit about the event, just introduce yourself to everyone that may not know you. If you're from this area, I'm pretty sure they know who you are. But for those that may not, can you introduce yourself, sir?
Surely. Well, of course, my name is Steve Williams. And I currently live in Georgetown. Mm-hmm. My folks were born and raised in Georgetown here in South Carolina. But most of the people who do know me, or know of me, I should say, know that I am a historian. Mm. And I love giving us history, particularly unknown history. Prior to all of the books that I've written and all of the places that I've talked, I was an educator for many years, and then the last, about 10 of the 35 years I was with the school system, I was a school administrator, assistant principal. But I'm retired now and have the love of writing. I've written for several newspapers locally and several other tabloids, so that's my joy of just telling the story. And it's not simply history. I've written about short stories, poetry, and people. One of my books is called The Overcomers, which was a collection of 32 of what I thought was my most compelling articles that I've written about people who've overcome their life adversities, because we need that. But that's what I've been doing since I retired, and I love it.
You know, I'm a big history buff myself. Actually, when I first enrolled in college at Dillard University in New Orleans, I majored in history before I changed it to communication. So I have a fascination for history as well. But
Great. Yeah.
Mr. Williams, what got you involved in history? What was the significance in that?
Well, you know what? I have to say my dad. My dad was a historian, Reverend Herbert L. Williams, and he was one of the persons. It's so interesting you should say that, TJ, because so many of us are into sports, and I like sports too. Mm-hmm. I even excelled in sports. But my dad, to my knowledge, was never into any particular sport, never knew he played any sport. But when I was growing up, he would always take the great black achievers, be it in politics or sports, and he would take the time to say, my nickname is Stevie. Mm-hmm. He would say, Stevie, that's Marion Motley. And I would say at 9 years old, well, who the heck is Marion Motley? Or that's Jackie Robinson.
Wow.
Or that's Shirley Chisholm. He would go out of his way to acknowledge the great black achievers. Marion Motley was a football player, by the way, for those who are not quite as old as I am. Or Bill Russell. And so because of my dad, I learned a lot, even before I got to high school. And one of the things I love, and I've said this before, that people who have experienced the horrors of Hitler and the Holocaust, they don't wait till their children go to school to learn about the Holocaust. They teach their children. Native Americans don't wait to get to school to hear nonsense about Christopher Columbus discovered America. They knew that they were the first Americans, okay?
Right.
And what's going on now currently, there's so much controversy about banning books and all of that. Well, that's bad, but what's even worse is when parents don't teach their children the proper history of what we have achieved, particularly African Americans, because ours is the greatest story that's never been told. And now, even the little bit that has been told, they're trying to cover up.
Right.
For instance, this program that we're having, we're entitling it Bring Harriet Home. And one of the first questions that people raise is, well, I didn't know Harriet Tubman was from Georgetown. She's not. Well, if she's not from Georgetown, why are you saying Bring Harriet Home? Because her legacy has touched Georgetown in ways that was not common knowledge. At least 7 years ago, I didn't know the connection that Harriet Tubman had to Georgetown. But then I drifted. I said, well, those of us who went to Sunday school remember that Aaron and Moses never set foot in the promised land.
Yeah.
But because of the groundwork that they laid 40 years in the wilderness, their legacy in the promised land is well known. I said, Dr. King, well, let me back up. A cell phone. Most of us, almost all of us, have never been to the moon, but the technology that was derived, the satellite from people going to the moon, we're using today. So Harriet Tubman did not have to set foot in Georgetown, but through her nephew, we're going to get into that, a fellow by the name of James Bowley. He did extraordinary things for Georgetown that is still lasting. And then I remember Dr. Martin Luther King. And he says, listen, I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. And I may not get there with you, but I want you to know that we as a people will get to the promised land. So we're calling it Bring Harriet Home because of what she did for the city of Georgetown. Many of us knows what she did for Beaufort and several other places, but few there be. It was not common knowledge of what she did for Georgetown, and so we're so happy about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you mentioned, Dr. King, not physically getting there, but envisioned it. And, that's what, this is about. Harriet Tubman is one of the most synonymous figures, in history.
Iconic, yes.
What she did, helping slaves escape to freedom, never got caught. Had over 100 different times coming back down, rescuing her family members, including who you just mentioned, James Bowley, her nephew.
Yeah.
So can we talk a little bit about James Bowley and his significance to South Carolina?
First of all, I want to thank you for the question. James Bowley was 6 years old in 1850. Let me back up. Harriet Tubman emancipated herself. She freed herself in 1849. Most of us know the history of why. Right. And that alone is heroic, okay, when you consider the times. Then a year later, when she was freed, there's an old saying, anything worth having is worth sharing.
Right.
She got to freedom, which for her was above the Mason-Dixon line in Philadelphia, okay? And she said, when I got there was no one to welcome me to the land of freedom. Then she said, well, I'm here, but my mother, my father, my sibling, my sister, my brother, my family is down in Maryland. And then she said this, TJ, she said, shouldn't they be free too? Right. That's why I'm saying anything worth having, I don't care if it's a car or house, if it's worth having, it is worth sharing. Then she got a message through the grapevine that Keziah Bowley, who was James Bowley's mother, and his younger sister, Araminta, who was an infant. Now, Araminta is the real name of Harriet Tubman. Right. So you got these three people. James Bowley, who was 6 years old in 1850. Right. His sister, Araminta, who was an infant. And his mother, Keziah. His mother and Harriet Tubman were aunt and niece. Harriet Tubman was the aunt and Keziah Bowley was the niece. But they were so close in age and in spirit that they considered themselves sisters. All right, now let me back up. All of this was not common knowledge. I came into this knowledge about 5 years ago by a very eminent professor by the name of Dr. Kate Clifton Lawson, who lives in Massachusetts.
Right.
And she brought it out in her book, Bound for the Promised Land.
Okay.
So what happened, she brought out the true relationship between Harriet Tubman. Now, when Harriet Tubman got the message that Keziah Boley and her children were going up on the auction block, that was her opportunity, because she already had been talking to God, and God had given her the message that you can do this. If you put me first, you can do this. So here's the other thing. Keziah Boley was John Boley's wife.
Okay.
Here's what a lot of people don't understand, because you don't see it in movies, is that in some states, free blacks and enslaved blacks were able to marry, but they were not able to live together.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
And so a free black would never, John Boley seldom saw his wife and his children. And then when the word came down that they were going up on the auction block, he was mortified, he was distraught, because he knew that the sanctity of a black family was never secure, because even the most benevolent master could fall into financial debt, which would warrant the selling off of slaves.
Right.
Okay? Now, he said, there's nothing I can do about it. Little did he know that Harriet Tubman had also heard about it through the grapevine. And she sent a coded letter, because she was not able to read or write legally. She sent a coded letter to John Boley. This is all in Maryland now. Let me back up again. What people don't understand, when we think of slavery, it's ingrained in our mind of slaves in a field over cotton or tobacco or all that stuff.
Right.
But little did we know that in Maryland and those states near the Mason-Dixon line, the enslaved people were maritime workers, and they were skilled. John Boley was freed when he was 30 by his master, and he continued with that craft, which means he can keep his money. He was a blacksmith, he was a carpenter, and a master seaman. He literally helped build ships.
Wow.
He and his other. All right,
Incredible.
so when Harriet sent him a coded letter saying that I'm coming, I've got a plan, keep it on the down low, keep it on the hush, but we're going to free your family.
Right.
John Boley said yes, because the only thing that was on his mind is freeing his family. And that in itself is so interesting, because John Tubman, Harriet Tubman's husband, when she left to come back a few years later to free him, you know what he said, TJ? I ain't going. Then on top of that, he had the nerve to say, not only that, I'm going to tell the master, you getting ready to run.
Wow.
So Harriet said, just forget about him. He's too far gone. All right. So the plan was for John Boley to go down to the auction block in Cambridge, Maryland, and bid on it. Now, here's a black man. No one said anything, not to the sheriff anymore. And this unassuming black man came down there to bid on that. They just assumed that he was another black man saying goodbye to his family.
Right.
Little did they know he won the bid. Didn't have a nickel, didn't have a penny, but he won the bid. And something strange happened. We don't know why, but for some inexplicable reason, the auctioneer decided to go to lunch, to break for lunch. Maybe he had intended to collect John Boley's money after lunch.
Right.
But what happened after they broke for lunch, someone guided him to a safe house, probably an abolitionist.
Right.
Okay. And later on that night, the scripture says, steal away, steal away. They stole away to the river where someone had left a boat.
Right.
Now, here's where the master seaman came in. He sailed for 90 miles from Cambridge, Maryland, down the Choptank River, up the Chesapeake Bay, and made it to Baltimore, where Harriet met him. All right? Now, obviously, he must have stayed in some of the safe houses, but he knew where the safe houses were.
Right.
Because the abolitionists had, and others. And he made it. Now, sailing in the winter up Chesapeake Bay was no easy feat. You were sailing against the currents, and not to mention the bounty hunters who were looking for runaway slaves.
Right.
So this is a wonderful adventure. That's why I have a book called, a children's book called Harriet Tubman and John Boley, Most Excellent Adventure. Let me get back to James Boley. So this is 1880. I'm sorry, 1850. Excuse me. Fast forward, TJ, 17 years to 1867. Harriet Tubman, after she freed John and Cassia Bowley and Araminta Bowley, had the fortitude. She hid them for a few months, and then she took them to Canada, the so-called Promised Land. All right. All right. But here's what the genius of Harriet Tubman. She had the fortitude and the blessing to say, I'm going to keep James Bowley with me in Philadelphia for one reason. I want him to get something that no one else, and I certainly didn't have. I want him to get a formal education. She did that. Fast forward to 1867, and here James Bowley is with the Freedmen's Bureau. He comes to Georgetown, and he becomes a teacher.
Wow.
But he possesses something that 99 or certainly 95% of African Americans didn't have, an education. You know why? Because it was illegal.
Exactly.
So he becomes a master teacher so well, helping set up freedmen schools, that they asked him to be the commissioner of Georgetown County Schools, which he was.
Wow.
All right. Now he also becomes the 20th black lawyer in the state of South Carolina. In addition to that, he was so popular, the brother was bad, I'm trying to tell you. He is asked to become a legislator, and he becomes not only a legislator in Columbia, but he becomes the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. For those of you who didn't take who was sleeping in high school, the Ways and Means Committee is the ching-ching. That's where the money is appropriated. The brother was bad. He becomes a publisher, publishing a newspaper called the Georgetown Planet. He sponsors a bill for a savings bank.
Right.
This is all less than 10 years after we've been enslaved, all right? He becomes a probate judge. He does all of these things for Georgetown. And this was not, I certainly didn't learn this in high school, you know. And so when I learned this, I said, oh man, we got to tell this story.
Right.
Because again, ours is the greatest story that's never been told.
Right.
All right. And so I don't worry about people not learning it in school. I'm pushing this in my books. I'm telling people now so they can tell their children and their grandchildren the greatness of Georgetown.
Right.
But let's get back to this celebration.
Yeah.
Because of what Harriet Tubman did for James Bowley, I neglected to tell you that when he became the school commissioner, he realized that funds were hard to come by.
Right.
Very hard to come by. Not like today. So he said, I need help because these kids have no books, no supplies. The teachers, you can't teach without this. Even clothing and food. You understand? So he said, I'm going to talk to my Aunt Harriet, who was living in Auburn, New York. She decided, she was so proud of him, she decided she would get together with her friends who were influential, from Frederick Douglass on down, abolitionists, and they raised something called freedom fairs or bazaars, where they raised money twice, not once. She raised over $500. That is equivalent to $10,000 in today's money value, where she had clothing and food for books and supplies. She said, I want you to take this back to Georgetown and help them. Now, I want to say this because I said this to a crowd yesterday. We all know that Harriet Tubman rescued X amount of people.
Right.
Literally hundreds.
Yeah.
Most of them was down in Beaufort or Port Royal during the war because she was a spy and a nurse and all of that.
Yeah.
But here's what we don't know. Harriet Tubman died in 1913, penniless, poor, penniless. And I say to you, Brother TJ, I don't know how many people ever stopped to say, thank you, Harriet, for just freeing me or helping my family. But we know what James Bowley did. Do you think she was proud of him?
Absolutely.
Oh, man, at 6 years old, none of us know what any of us are going to be when we grow up. But all we need is the opportunity to prove that we are equal to the challenge.
Yeah.
And that brother was equal to the challenge. Like I said, anything worth having is worth sharing. Sure, he made a little money, but he tried to help his people, not just blacks, but anybody in Georgetown they needed, because you have to understand, it was the black legislators. My dad told me this. He said there was no such thing as free school. The rich planters from around here were filthy rich. They were sending their kids to Europe and all other places to be educated. But neither blacks nor white could go to any school. You understand?
Right.
So that's why we're saying James Bowley is a hero, because he said thank you. Now, in the commemorative booklet that we will be giving out to anybody who will attend this Saturday, we'll get into that, but you'll see a letter that James Bowley wrote to the first biographer of Harriet Tubman, Sarah, I forget the last name, Bradford, where 1868 he says, "You work for $1 a week, Harriet, to pay for my education, to pay for my school, and I cannot thank you enough for that." So education paid off.
Yeah, it definitely did, and thank you for sharing all those stories. I mean, and it's amazing how everything just connects. How you talk about Joseph Hayne Rainey, where the statue is going to take place at the Joseph Hayne Rainey Park.
Yes.
And then also where you talk about Harriet and people, not saying thank you for all the things that she did. This
Yes.
is the moment where individuals can come from all over to marvel at this statue and show their appreciation and gratitude to Harriet Tubman. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the event. Like you said, you mentioned it's on August 5th. It's an unveiling of it. The statue rolled out there. There was some press out there. There was individuals out there. Give us that moment when it arrived. How was the atmosphere, and what was on your mind as you seen this beautiful 10-foot statue approach you?
I got to tell you, it was one of the most exciting, emotional, awesome experiences of my entire life. And I'm in my 60s, so I've had a lot. But what happened yesterday was just so spirited. It really was. And you don't have to take my word for it. It's all over the social media. Georgetown has never, in my experience, never experienced anything like this before. Never. What happened was, those of us who organized the event, fellow who is a very, 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 very good friend of mine by the name of Mr. Kent Herms, who now is the owner and the resident of the Bowley House in Georgetown. I got to give him a shout out. I call him my brother from another mother because he's of the other persuasion, but we are brothers. We decided, along with Marilyn Hemingway from Georgetown, the CEO of the Gullah Geechee Foundation.
Wonderful lady.
Chamber, yes. A lot of us know Marilyn. We decided 4 years ago to put up a marker. We petitioned the South Carolina Archives to give a marker in front of the Bowley House. Again, when we found out the connection, because this was not common knowledge.
Right.
If it was, I would have written about it 10 years ago. Okay, so we did that, and that was a wonderful ceremony and celebration. That was September 2019. But this, what happened yesterday, I've never seen anything like it. You talk about the diversity and the inclusion. People literally got off their jobs to come see it. And Marilyn had the fortitude to say when the statue comes in, let me just say this, it's a traveling exhibit of this 10-foot tall, 4 feet wide statue. And the man who did it, his name is Wesley Walford. He did several movies as an artist with Tyler Perry, doing the makeup for several of Tyler Perry's characters.
Wow.
Man's got so many movies, I don't remember which one. But his uncle, his brother, all that funny stuff.
Right.
He also worked with Martin Lawrence.
Okay.
And Big Mama.
Big Mama's
He did
house.
the makeup for that.
Wow.
Okay. So he's tough, all right? So now, I don't know, he has several sculptures, but this one has resonated with the people throughout the United States because it's been a traveling exhibit for the last 2 years. I know for a fact it's been in White Plains, Philadelphia, North Carolina. So he came to Georgetown on the behests of the eminent author that I mentioned earlier, Dr. Kate Larson, to see the Bowley House. And my friend Kemp Humes graciously opened up his house. And when we learn of this statue, and you have to see it, words cannot do it justice. We said, wouldn't it be nice if we can get it to Georgetown? And we asked him, and he said yes. Now, it wasn't free, but we had enough time to raise money, and I'm going to acknowledge all of our fundraisers, particularly the Hammock Coast and all of the other businesses, Georgetown Business Association. We'll get into that. For 14 months now, we've been meeting every month to plan this, all right? And then when it came yesterday, it was Maryland's idea to have it go through various communities because everybody won't be able to be there Saturday.
Right.
And I'm telling you, Brother TJ, I've never seen anything like it. People were hugging, kissing the thing. Oh, my Jesus. They all had phones taking pictures, just going stir crazy. And they all said the same thing. This is awesome. I tell you, I did the same thing. It was down in Yamasee before it came here. And it's going to be here all the rest of this year. Georgetown for 3 months and then Brookgreen Gardens.
Okay.
I kissed it, okay? And I ain't crazy, but I said, oh, my God. And everybody took pictures and they're hugging it, and they all said the same thing. It's spiritual. Right. It passes the mind and the body and the logic, and it goes straight to the soul. All right? My daughter, one of my daughters said, well, Daddy, that's because you know the history. I said, even if you don't know the history, you can see the greatness of this. Yeah. So yesterday, we went to the Southern Georgetown Library. First, people came out, must have had at least 50 to 60 people there, maybe more, probably more. Then we went to Andrews, then it went to Plantersville, which I went there, then it went to Waccamaw before it came to Georgetown. Can you imagine? It was on a flatbed truck, and can you imagine, it was literally almost stopping traffic. People were stopping to take pictures of it. Hey, Harriet! You know, that kind of stuff. So when it got to Georgetown, I got to be honest, because of my age and because of the heat, I couldn't make all 4 stops. So I had to go home and shower because I was like, I'm burning up here, like a raisin in the sun. Yeah. So when it got to Georgetown, I was refreshed, and I went out there, and I'm saying, wait a minute. I ain't never seen anything like this. I really haven't. People literally got off their job, stopped whatever they was doing to come down there. Now, it's still there. It's covered up now, but it's still there. So the promotion alone was priceless.
Well, that's awesome, you know, and it's great that people had that experience to be able to enjoy that, and they're going to have opportunity to enjoy it on August 5th at 11:30. The event, the unveiling of the statue. But I do know that you want to acknowledge some of the people that made this possible. So if you can go ahead and acknowledge those individuals.
Thank you. And let me just say this before I acknowledge these people. If you're coming Saturday, and I thank God if you do, if you can, bring a chair, because the parking is going to be tight. And the seating is going to be tight. It's a park, but it's not the biggest park. And of course, it gets hot in the summer. Right, yeah, so if you have a chair, bring that, okay, and try to come early. The other thing I want to say is that on the program, we'll have Miss South Carolina, who happens to be African American, but she's coming. Yeah. We have contest winners. The part of the celebration was to ask the school children in Georgetown County if they would do an essay contest and an oratorical contest, which they are. There's one young lady, I haven't met her. Her name is Eleanor Forrest, and I'm telling you, I think she's almost professional in her oratorical. And we have singers coming, we have speakers, we have the sculptor and his wife coming, we have the writer, the eminent professor, we have Tina Wyatt, who is the great-great-great-granddaughter of Harriet Tubman. We got dignitaries coming, plus the mayor and state representative Carl Anderson, our state representative. We've got a lot of people on the program. Now, we're also going to try to get it done in 75 to 90 minutes. So we're asking, we can't, you know how we are when you give people a mic, including me. We're asking for 2 or 3 minutes, okay? Because it's hot. Yeah. All right. Some of the people on the planning committee, these are some of the people that were helping and planning with us for literally more than a year. The Georgetown business. By the way, when we went, we being Marilyn, Kent Herms, and myself, when we came up with this idea of bringing Harriet home to Georgetown, the first thing we decided that we wanted to be inclusive and diverse. I don't believe Georgetown belongs to any particular race, right, or any particular political party. All of that. When it comes to Harriet Tubman and James Bowley, they are larger than that. Yeah. There's an old saying, heroes are people whose spirits are larger than their circumstances. And I don't want to, I'm not trying to belittle anybody's experience, right, but Harriet Tubman is bigger than any culture. She is an international icon. Yep. And so we knew that. Yeah. And we insisted that we open it up to everybody. All right, so some of the first people we went to was the Georgetown Business Association. They said, yes, we love that idea. The mayor and everyone else. Pawleys Island Litchfield Business Association. Brook Green Gardens. George, they liked it so much, they got it coming after we did. Hello. Right. And now we have Georgetown County Chamber of Commerce. We have the Georgetown County School District. We have the Georgetown County Library System. We have the Georgetown County Museum. We have the Maritime Museum. We have the Gullah Museum. We have the Rice Museum. We have Marilyn Hemingway's Gullah Geechee Chamber of Commerce. We have the Hammock Coast as on sponsor. We also have the what is called the APACS Association. Let me say it right because I don't want to leave anybody else.
Okay.
I mentioned the Hammock Coast and the Georgetown County ATAX and hospitality funders of the event. These are people who not only embraced it, but gave us funding, helped us with it. Now, I don't even want to tell you how much it costs money to bring this thing here. You understand?
I understand.
And these guests, you know, they're not coming on the back of the truck. We got to fly them in. You understand?
Right.
But we're so happy because they embrace it. Now, not only that, sororities, black sororities and fraternities have embraced it. A lot of them have taken out ads in our commemorative booklets and volunteers. It's amazing how they embrace it. And it brought, I mean, literally, tears to my eyes to see the diversity yesterday. People that you would never think. We put, you know, there's an old saying, when you go to the movies, you have to park your hat of intelligence at the door. And just, when you see any movie. Oh, by the way, I wrote an article about 2 blockbusters coming out. One, my man, Denzel Washington, is coming out with Equalizer 3.
Okay.
That'll probably be in a few months. And then Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise, yeah.
Now, what I said is that there's an old saying that truth is stranger than fiction. A lot of people will come out, as they did for Barbie, and I didn't have any appetite for that. I'm too old, long in the tooth for that. But I did see Oppenheimer. Okay. We are coming back to the movies. So we got 2 other movies coming out. And people will break their neck to come out to see Mission Impossible. But here's a woman, not once, but at least 13 times, went on a seemingly impossible mission to free people.
All right.
So I asked them, come out to see this. This is truth. This is not fiction.
Right.
And I don't have a problem with people going to movies. I love going to the movies.
Right.
I love it. But there's nothing like seeing a person who's a real hero, who went through real missions impossible. And you say, well, what has this got to do with Equalizer? Well, James Bowley went out of his way to equalize people who have been marginalized and dehumanized. Why? How did he do that, Mr. Steve? He tried to give them a newspaper because they were learning to read. He tried to give them a bank because they were keeping some of their money.
Yeah.
He tried to give them the power. He opened up the doors to the University of, not South Carolina State, but the University of South Carolina at a time when blacks were barred from there.
Yeah.
So he tried to equalize us. He wanted to say, you matter, you human. Long before the slogan Black Lives Matter, he knew that. All right, so like I said, I can preach on this.
You're preaching now. No, but I mean, you're telling the truth. I mean, Harriet Tubman, I mean, is a historical figure. And you know, what she did was just absolutely amazing. You mentioned like she couldn't read and she couldn't write, but she was able to rescue so many slaves to bring them to freedom. And you know, this weekend, I think that this is the moment where we can just sit back and have an appreciation for her. I know, you know, the conversation of her, you know, being on the $20 bill eventually and all those type of things, but I mean, this is important to the city of Georgetown, and not only just the city of Georgetown, but just American history in general.
Yes.
So once again, tell us about the event on August 5th and the time and, you know.
Thank you. Again, thank you. I really do appreciate the opportunity. You guys got quite a megaphone here. What we did when that would be, again, Ken Humes, my brother from another mother, and my friend, and Marilyn Hemingway, who is also one of my best friends now, we decided that instead of bringing like so many other cities, we had a choice. You can bring the exhibit here for 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months.
Right.
We went for the 3. And we decided that we would wrap programs around it, events around it for the entire summer. So the unveiling is Saturday morning, but again, on the 26th of August, we've got a tremendous group coming from, I believe they're out of Charleston. It's called the Gullah Kinfolks Traveling Theater, musical production. And Miss Pearlie Sue, if those of you who remember kids program, it's probably 40 or 50 of them coming. And that's on the 26th at 6 p.m. at the Wynyard Auditorium in Georgetown. Now that's a ticketed event, but it's affordable.
Right.
Okay, I went out my way to make sure that it's affordable.
Okay.
All right, and on the 16th of September, we have another production, a dramatic performance by a noted, prominent actor, artist by the name of Natalie Days, who she and her husband are both extreme artists, well known throughout the area. Those of us who are over a certain amount of age remember a television show, I think it was PBS or ETV, called Gullah Gullah Island.
Gullah Gullah Island,
Okay.
yeah.
In fact, my daughter, when I was given an award at Brookman Gardens last year, and when my daughter saw him, she said, "Daddy, that's Gullah Gullah Island." And that had to be 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But anyway, Natalie is doing a one-woman performance of Harriet Tubman. Again, she's been doing it well for probably a decade, all over this state and all over this country. She's tough, let me tell you. And then in October, we have an Artist Village showcase of local artists. Remember, Georgetown and all of this area is Gullah.
Right.
So we're bringing out the Gullah, okay? Also in the Maritime Museum, starting this week, I believe this week, certainly Saturday, maybe before that, there's a video that I did on Harriet Tubman.
Okay.
It's only 10 minutes, but we have groups coming in to see this. The title of my book is called John Tubman and Harriet Tubman, and John Bowley, Most Excellent Adventure. And what is in this book is going to be visualized in this video, okay? All right, with music and all of that. So we have all of these events, and I'm probably forgetting others. I know I have a book signing at the Rice Museum August the 16th, but there's a lot. And if you go to Georgetown, we want you to patronize the businesses there, the restaurants, because these people, they didn't have to do it, but they embraced it. Yeah. It's a celebration. Now, I'm going to say this. Harriet Tubman is large, huge around the country. She's big down in Beaufort, deservingly so. Yeah. She's big all over Maryland, deservingly so. She's big in Albany, New York, deservingly so. She's big in Canada, deservingly so. Why shouldn't Georgetown share in her greatness? Right. When she raised that money and sent books and supplies and food and clothing at a time when we needed it most, Harriet Tubman could have done it. She didn't do it for Beaufort, she did it for Georgetown. Yeah. I've always thought that Georgetown should be capitalizing off of that. Not for selfish reasons, but everyone else is saying we're taking ownership of Harriet Tubman. Why shouldn't Georgetown do that? Yeah. Okay, she's a hero.
That's true. She's definitely a hero, an iconic figure, and she's worth celebrating. And, I want everyone to come on out August 5th, 11:30 a.m. For the unveiling of Harriet Tubman Statue. Just get opportunity to take a look at it, take it all in, and just reflect on the greatness and just the icon that she is and the amazing work that she did at a time where, like you said, mission impossible. It seemed impossible, right? But she made the impossible possible. And thank you so much for making this possible, along with Mr. Kent. Shouts out to Mr. Kent and Ms. Marilyn Hemingway, who do an amazing job. And look forward to the event and all the other activities that's coming up. Definitely got to make my way to Georgetown and take a look at it.
Thank you. Yeah.
And it's always a pleasure, Mr. Williams, to speak with you. And we look forward to all the events that you have, not just this weekend, but in the future as well, sir.
Yes, sir. Again, thank you guys. Mr. Ernie, he's a good friend of mine, and I don't know if Greg is still here, but you guys have always opened up your studio to help us promote that. And I'm not one to just beat his own chest, but some things are bigger, like I said.
Yeah.
Heroes are people whose spirit bigger than their circumstances.
Yeah.
It's so nice to see something positive.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I'm tired of all this negative news, all this division.
Yeah.
You know, I don't care what church you go to. I don't care what political party you're in. Some things are bigger than that.
Exactly.
And this is one of them.
Yep, absolutely. And
yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. And make sure that you come on out once again to Rainey Park to make sure that you take part in this historical event. Mr. Williams, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And once again, this is 90.9 FM, Radio Baha'i, streaming at radiobaha'i.us.
All right. Thank you.